Over the last couple of years, an interesting phenomenon has occurred. Gaming companies are greedy. I'm looking at you, EA. Okay, I mean, actually, this has been happening since the day the gaming industry was born. Yet, over the last 2 years or so, the price of many AAA games have increased from the standard $60 to now $70. Many of you might be thinking this small difference is rather insignificant. However, this small change could potentially bring some very negative side effects to the rest of the gaming industry. Before we dive into the most prominent causes as to why video games are now increasing in price, we first have to explore the history of video game pricing. Looking back at video games in the 90s, surprisingly, Nintendo 64 games went upwards of $60 at times. Super Mario 64 was $67, and other games like Star Fox 64 reached up to an insane $80 price tag. Also keep in mind that this was the mid to late 90s, so over 2 decades of inflation would make an $80 game like Star Fox 64 worth almost $150 in today's money. No wonder gaming is much more popular today. The prices Nintendo specifically was asking are completely unbelievable. Despite this, Nintendo obviously wasn't the only company with outrageous prices. In the case of PlayStation, prices were still extreme, yet far more reasonable than Nintendo. The original PlayStation released in 1994, and games remained under the $50 price point throughout its life cycle. Keep in mind, a brand new PS1 game would be about $100 when adjusted for inflation, so yeah, it was still very expensive. The PS2 rolled out in 2000, and the Xbox shortly after in 2001. Both of these consoles had their games stay around the $50 price point with some variation here and there. Now, you don't see the jump of games becoming $60 until 2005 and 2006 with the release of the Xbox 360 and the PS3. If you specifically take a closer look at PlayStation games, they remained at the $50 price point for about 12 years. And keep in mind, over time, inflation will continuously rise, so technically their games were slowly becoming cheaper. $50 in 1994 is equivalent to about $100 today, and $50 in 2006 is about $73 in today's climate. So frankly, this price bump makes sense. Since the release of the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, gaming prices have stayed at $60 for approximately 15 years. Keep in mind, not every game is at this price point, yet the most popular and successful AAA studios tend to stay at this MSRP. Towards the end of the 2010s, games like Fortnite and Apex Legends helped pioneer a new trend in the industry that actually benefited both the customer and the company. Free-to-play games had been a staple in many smaller, less significant indie titles. However, these larger franchises brought it into the mainstream and managed to rely on cosmetic microtransactions, which ended up earning companies like Epic Games an outrageous amount of money, while also providing players with free content. Many companies began to follow the trend, but in a more greedy way. Games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare come to mind, where they would still charge $60 on top of bombarding fans with battle pass systems and countless cosmetic character skins. Frankly, this was still an improvement, as the season pass systems were now being replaced with new free content systems. This somehow created even more issues. In cases like Battlefront 2, companies would now release games promising free content later on down the road. But the catch is, they would drop the most incomplete games known to man. Like, okay, how can you release a Star Wars game without Anakin Skywalker, literally the main character of Star Wars? Alright, that's officially the worst joke of the video. Let's keep going. Anyways, the gaming industry was in shambles, and countless different monetization strategies were attempted, many of which worked and many didn't. The Battle Pass and free content method was likely the most popular. Everything from Rocket League to Fall Guys to even the most random mobile games had a Battle Pass. I'm willing to bet that if you looked up Truck Driver Simulator, it would even have its own Battle Pass. The complete adjustment of monetization in video games likely sparked the dilemma we are facing today, which is the title of this video, $70 games. Games like Battlefield 2042 and Jedi Survivor both hold $70 price points at launch. The main reason behind this is they're completely unable to go the Fortnite route, and this is what I mean by that. Battlefield is a first-person shooter game, so cosmetic character skins are made into an unlucrative option. In the case of Jedi Survivor, it's a single-player game, so half of the value of purchasing cosmetics is gone. As a consumer, a big incentive to buy in-game fashion is to appeal to others. For example, who would want to spend $20 on a Travis Scott skin in Fortnite if no one ever saw it? So essentially, games that are unable to fully rely on cosmetics to drive their income are forced to rake in as much money as possible in other ways. Games in this scenario have the option of going the season pass route, which was popular in the early to mid 2010s. It's where a consumer pays more money on top of the game purchase to receive extra content. However, this method is outdated. Games like No Man's Sky offer huge updates for free extremely often. With many other games being stuck in this situation, along with Jedi Survivor and Battlefield 2042, it only makes sense they raise the initial price of purchase to $70, or at least that's what they want you to believe. Along with this, there are a few other less significant factors that are likely causes, or rather excuses, to raise the MSRP of games. An extremely obvious yet boring answer is inflation. Due to the political and economic state of the world right now,
Dude, like, oh my God, like, can we talk about like the political and economic state of the world right now?
inflation is rapidly increasing, making game developers instinctively want to raise their prices as manufacturing costs increase. I could talk more about inflation, but honestly, it's really boring. Another point of reasoning game studios gave for the price bump is what I would call the next-gen excuse. Popular companies will claim, our game is made for next-gen, so can you please give us your wallet? Okay, they don't actually say that, but that's what they're implying. Many titles like God of War Ragnarok are charging $60 for the PS4 version of the game and $70 for the PS5 version. This specific case makes more sense as those on the PS5 version are receiving a better experience. With the same statement, games such as Battlefield 2042 charge $70 to everyone. Obviously, I hold a bias against the $70 price tags on gaming, but in an instant like God of War, I can understand the price adjustment for those who are experiencing the game at a higher quality. At this point in the video, it is obvious that I am against this sudden change in price. As a gamer, I believe it is unfair. The biggest reasoning I have behind this belief is that games are constantly being released in a state of intentional incompletion. Battlefront 2 released in November 2017, and a month later in December received a massive update adding content for the newest Star Wars movie. That content was essential to the first month of the game's existence, yet it was pushed back in order to build more hype. Fallout 76 was years away from being ready for release, yet it was pushed out quickly to compete with Red Dead 2 and hop on the Battle Royale ship before it sailed off. Guess what? They both completely failed. Or even Battlefield 2042, which released for $70 and the game was objectively incomplete. This trend of releasing unfinished games has been a major problem in the gaming industry for more than half a decade. This fact, combined with an increase in price, simply makes no sense. Another highly important factor to keep in mind is the outrageous amounts of microtransactions found within almost every game today. Granted, current day cosmetic focused microtransactions are much better than pay-to-win systems like loot boxes and Call of Duty Black Ops 4. However, if you look at the numbers, gaming companies make absurd amounts of money strictly from microtransactions, which has only become more popularized in recent years. The surplus of in-game transactions helps contribute to the ridiculous nature of increasing the launch price. In conclusion, this price increase is unfair for gamers. Game developers make more money now than ever before, yet more and more systems of unfairness are put into place. While I don't believe an extra $10 being added to the price tag is the most worrisome outcome in the world, it's more so the message certain companies are sending that makes them feel out of touch and greedy, which truly makes me dislike this change. Oh, and the fact that I'm broke doesn't really help. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Go check out the video in the top left, which is how Battlefield 2042 killed Battlefront 2 and itself, and also go check out the video in the top right, which is how Jedi Survivor could save Star Wars gaming.